adhesion. As you can see, I've got all my tiles cut. Everything's laid out with spacers, and so far it's looking pretty good. What I'm doing now is applying my adhesive with a V-notch trowel. This one here is a 1/4 inch by 3/16 of an inch V-notch trowel. And the way I'm doing this, and there's a couple different ways. After you get your tile laid out, you can come back and start lifting tiles and use, like, say for example, I've got a straight run of a seam right here. Make sure I catch this on the camera. All the way down to the end. What I could have done is I could have pulled these tiles up right above it and then struck a pencil line down that seam, and then went ahead and pulled these tiles up as well. And then I could have spread my my mastic, or my glue, it's also called mastic, and then just started laying the tiles in. And now that'd have been a little bit quicker on a wall installation, or where I'm laying a lot of tile. That's what I'll do. But in this particular case, you know, it's a fairly small job, and I prefer to butter my pull one tile at a time, leaving the spacers in all of the surrounding tiles. Butter the tile with the glue, and then put it back into place, and put my spacers in, then do the same thing with the next one. And one of the things that does is that minimizes your squeeze out. The glue has a tendency to, when you put your glue down and then lay your tiles on it, depending on how much glue you used and the size of your trowel and whatnot, you'll have a tendency to get squeezed out in these joints that you have to go back and clean out before you grout. With this V-notch trowel, it shouldn't have been that big of a deal with squeeze out, but I just prefer to butter them each individually and put them back in place. And that helps me keep my lines better, because if you do strike a line along one edge of your seam and then pull all your tiles out and spread your mastic or your glue, sometimes it can be difficult to see that line because it's being covered by glue, even though I don't know if you'll be able to see it. I did do a little bit there. I put the glue down first and then put the tile on top. But your pencil line can become difficult to see, and ensuring that your tiles get down exactly on that line as you struck it. One of the things I wanted to talk about, whichever way you decide to do, stick with it. Don't butter your tile on one run and then lay your mastic down like I did here, but I compensated for it. What I'm going to talk about is that on the back of your tile here, you have these raised ridges, and that will make a difference when you're putting your glue on, whether you've glued to your substrate first and then laying your tiles on it, or you've buttered your tile and then laid it down on your substrate. It will make a difference in the height of the tile, the finished height. What will happen is that if you've glued onto your substrate first and then laid your tiles down, those tiles will actually be a 1/16 of an inch lower than the surrounding tiles that you buttered and placed around it. And it may not seem like too big of a deal, and it's not, but if something were to be spilled on this countertop, that'll just make a collection point where that liquid will pool. And I don't know, you may want that to keep it from running all over the place. But when you go to grout these tiles, then it'll be a little bit more difficult if all the tiles are not on the same level or on the same plane. It'll be a little bit more difficult to clean the grout up and make a nice grout line in these joints. So, and another thing you want to keep in mind too is when you're buttering these tiles, or when you're putting your glue down on your substrate, you want to make sure you get an even coat You don't want any pockets missing adhesive, and it's easier to see when you're buttering a tile. You don't want any, you want to get that glue as close to the edge as you can, and you don't want to leave any pockets, any corners unglued and whatnot, because what will happen is that once you, say you've put your glue on here and you didn't glue that corner. Well, when you lay this tile down, what's going to happen is that everything from this line back where you didn't glue is going to be supported, and then this piece here won't be supported underneath it. And if something does get dropped on it, it'll be more prone to breakage than if you had a nice even coat of glue all the way across. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish gluing these tiles in, and then I'm going to work on my backsplash, get that glued in, and then I'll walk away from it. It's going to have to sit for, I like to let them sit for at least 24 hours before I put my grout in. And the reason is you want to make sure that that adhesive has had plenty of time to set up. This stuff dries by evaporation, so you want to leave these gaps open so that your moisture from the glue has a chance to vent, to escape. If you went to grout this, you know, it may seem stable now, but when you're doing your grouting, you're going to be applying a lot of pressure with your grout float. You're going to be pushing grout into the joints, and then when you're done, you're going to come back and sweep it off with your float, and that you're going to be putting a lot of pressure on these. And if that glue's not had the opportunity to set up well, then you have a chance of shifting your tiles around, because when you go to grout, you're going to pull all these spacers out. So you want to wait at least 24 hours, maybe as long as 48 hours. It depends on the size of the tile. I can think of some applications where you have 18 by 18 tiles or 24 by 24 tiles, especially a floor tile. And it'll take longer for that glue, or in that case, that mortar, that thin set mortar, to dry, because you got a lot more of it. And you want to give it plenty of opportunity to set up and dry, especially on a floor application, because what you'll be doing is you'll actually be walking on that tile prior to grouting it as well. Because say for example, this is a floor tile and this is your door, say to a bathroom or the room, and then this is your back wall, where you're going to start at the back wall and grout your way out, so you don't trap yourself inside the room, because you don't want to be walking on the fresh grout, because if you got anything on your shoes, it may get embedded in that grout and ruin an otherwise really good grout job. So prior to walking on these tiles, kneeling on them, and whatever else you're going to be doing when you're going to be grouting back up in here and working your way out, you want to make sure that your tiles are not going to shift under you. So that's the thing to keep in mind. It depends on the size of your tile. I think 24 hours will be plenty of time for these to for this to set up. Not only is it going to evaporate, but that particle board underneath there is going to suck the moisture out of it too, and absorb the moisture. And it'll all dry out eventually and be set really well. But so after I get my tiles glued in and my backsplash on, then I'll just walk away from it and do something else. There's plenty to do in this house yet. And then tomorrow I'll grout it. So until then.